introduction. How about a great round of applause for Tommy Thompson? I'll be mentioning every time I'm in the state. Tommy's like an incredible guy. I don't know if you all understand what he's done for our country, but he was the 4-term governor of Wisconsin, which is just remarkable. When I was first elected governor, I called Haley Barbour, and Haley was the governor of Mississippi. I said, he was governor for 2 terms. He said, Haley, do you miss being governor? He goes, anybody who wants to be governor more than 2 terms has got something wrong with them. So, that says about you, Tommy. But, and he also, of course, was in the cabinet and did an incredible job in Health and Human Services. This is, there's some people that I've known in my lifetime that I believe that they're so special that sometimes they're gone before we get to really appreciate who they are. And there's a friend of mine, his name is Michael Novak. He's a Catholic theologian. I consider him to be like the modern C.S. Lewis of our time. And I just love to talk to Michael and spend time with him. There are other people like that, but Tommy fits into that category. I mean, he is so smart. I just said to him, what do you think about the FDA? We have to fix the Food and Drug Administration. What do you think? Without even blinking, he gives me 4 talking points. You see, Tommy is a visionary. That's what you have to understand about him. He's a visionary. Frankly, Tommy, they want me to drop out. If you'll get in, I'll drop out and support you for president. Okay? No, he is a visionary. He sees things. His mind is working very fast. And frankly, what goes through my mind is I got to have all my folks working on policy call him because his mind is working. And where did I see a thing? If you don't think differently, there's so many great. Have you been looking up here? Huh? I don't see it now, but there was one about if you keep doing what you did in the past, it won't work. You need to be with change. I'm a change agent. Tommy's a change agent. I think that, Tommy, that's why we get along. We're always thinking about the next thing we need to do. But we do it in a responsible way. I mean, I don't want to just destroy. See, we're not really establishment people. We work with the establishment, but we don't take orders from anybody. Tommy never has. I never have. So, Tommy, we talked about when I was a congressman. I tell you, I was elected. Let me give you a little story. My father carried mail on his back. His father was a coal miner. My mother's mother could barely speak English. My mother was the only one of the family to get out of the 8th grade and get a high school diploma. I come from a blue-collar Democrat town. I never met a Republican, really, until I went to college, or maybe I went to some meeting somewhere. But this was a town where they're like, see these guys sitting back here? They get up in the morning and they just praying their job's going to exist tomorrow. All right, guys? They're worried. They're nervous about their future. Nervous about, their benefits, their 401k, I would imagine they have here. So I grew up in a town where it was like that. People were very nervous about losing their jobs, and they're really always worried about their kids. But we had peace. We had peace because, frankly, we loved one another. And the neighborhood and the community would pull for one another. But we saw dips, ups and downs. And if you go back to the town where I grew up with, you went back there today, it's a very, very tough place. Very tough. Poverty, broken down. But, so what? You can't be held down if you want to lift yourself up. That's the beauty of America. That's what my mother and father always taught me. So all of my lifetime, the reason I got into politics was basically to change the world. Now, you may say that's a political thing. No, it's not for me. It's not for Tommy. I got into politics to try to change things and basically to speak up for people who usually don't get represented very well. Because a lot of times in politics, the rich and the powerful are the ones that get their way. And that's never really mattered to me because I figure they can always take care of themselves. But these guys that are back here, they're the ones that I'm concerned about. What's going to happen to their family? How about their kids and all that? I first ran for office. Oh no, I got to go. Where's Doug? Is Doug in here? Or is he moving around? So I go to Ohio State. Tommy, you've never heard this story. I go to Ohio State. And because I wanted to get out of this little town, okay? So I go there, and I find myself in the dormitory that is 23 floors high, and I have 15 college roommates. They stuffed everyone into this little sardine can. And it was difficult because the university was so big, so much bureaucracy, and I was there, and I loved being there, but in a short time I became frustrated. So I called the president of the university's office and asked for a meeting. And they didn't really want to give me a meeting right away. And I said, well, we're going to have a meeting because we're just going to have one. That's what my mother taught me. So they finally let me in. So I go see the president of the university, and I get all dressed up. I put on my blue jeans and blue jean shirt and necktie and go in to see him. And he says, and I walk in, he's very impressive, beautiful office, beautiful carpeting and furniture and all that. And he says, what's on your mind, young man? So I tell him. And I looked at him, I said, sir, I've been in school about a month now, maybe 2 months. And I'm undecided at Ohio State as to what I want to be, but looking at this office and the lighting and the furniture and the desks and all this, maybe this is the job for me. So he tells me about his responsibilities, his fundraising responsibilities and his academic responsibilities, and he says, tomorrow I'm going to fly to Washington and have a meeting with President Nixon because I'm friendly with him and I have some things to talk to him about. And I said, well, sir, there's a number of things that I would like to talk to him about also. Could I just go with you? And he said, no. And I said, if I write a letter, would you give it to the President of the United States? And now here's a lesson for the young people here. He said, I guess I could do that. So if you don't ask, they can't say no, okay? So he says, yeah, I can do that. So I went back to my dorm and I wrote a letter to the President of the United States, basically inviting myself to the White House for a meeting, and signed it sincerely, John Kasich, P.S. You know, I'm a college student. I got time. I can come and see you. So a couple weeks later, I go down to my mailbox, and there is a letter from the office of the president. I open it up, and I go upstairs to my dorm room, and I call home. And my mother answers the phone, and I said, Mom, I'm going to need an airline ticket. The President of the United States would like to have a meeting with me in the Oval Office. And my mother is shouting, honey, pick up the phone. There's something really wrong with Johnny. True story. Now think about this. I'm gone for like 2 months, and I'm telling my mother I got to go to Washington in the White House. Her sister and 2 brothers didn't graduate from the 8th grade. My father's carrying mail, and his father was a coal miner. Their kid's gone for 2 months. So you wonder what they're thinking, right? So they actually go get me an airline ticket, and I fly down to Washington. And I go through the White House security, and I'm sitting right outside the Oval Office on a little bench. And a guy walks up to me and says, you're going to get 5 minutes alone with the President of the United States. Senator, what do you think? I'm 18 years old, a first quarter. You think? I'll tell you what I'm thinking. I've got a new jacket, new shirt, new tie, new pants. I didn't come here for 5 lousy minutes. So they opened up the door, and the President greeted me, and I greeted him. And to make a long story short, I spent 20 minutes alone in the Oval Office as an 18-year-old first-quarter freshman. I spent 18 years in Congress, and if you add up all the time I spent in the Oval Office, I peaked out at the age of 18 and should have moved to La Crosse. So this has been my whole lifetime. So when I was 24 years old, I was working in the legislature and got that job on a fluke, and then I said, I'm going to run. So I quit my job, and I ran for the state Senate. And it was a very tough campaign, and I was elected. I was the youngest person ever elected to the Ohio Senate, and there were only 33 of us in the state. So I made a couple promises when I ran. I said, number one, I think we should have a part-time legislature, which I think all legislatures ought to be. And secondly, I didn't think we should have a pay raise because of that. And thirdly, I was never going to support any tax increases because I thought there was too much waste in the government because I actually worked there and knew what they did with the money. So I get elected. So first 2 years, I'm in the minority. And in the third year, we win the majority, the Republicans. So the first thing they want to do is pass a pay raise. So I vote no. And they go, oh, well, we know you're going to vote no. I said, well, but I'm not even taking the money. And I turned the money down for 2 years. And then I learned that people thought I was nuts because I turned the money down. I probably should have taken it. But that was the first thing that aggravated everybody. And then the second thing is they had a plan to raise taxes. The Republicans. So they came to me, and this one guy was yelling at me in my office. I said, I'll tell you what. Why don't we just go down in the parking lot? I've got some gloves in the car, and let's just fight right down there and get this resolved. And he left because he was afraid. And so I offered my first budget, Tommy. And we had to close at that time, as I recall, it was like a $400 million gap. Now, I'm working on trillions now. You think $400 million intimidated me? So I wrote a proposal to balance the budget without a tax increase, which lost. But that was the beginning of it. And that's when I learned that if you're the budget chairman, you can actually know how to run the country. You know everything that's going on, which is why I wanted to get on the budget committee. And I also knew that if we have those numbers, guys in the back, see that $19 trillion? When people look at that, business people, because you make your money selling structural steel, people don't want to take on big projects when the money's out of control because they don't know what's going to happen. So I always felt that if we could get those numbers not only stabilized but coming down, that we would see economic growth. And that's exactly what happened in Washington when I was chairman, and Tommy was one of the people that came down, Governor Thompson, and helped us. And because of him, we reformed welfare, we saved money. And he had a lot of other ideas, and we were able to act. I mean, think about it. At the end of the last century, which seems like the end of the last century, it was only like 16 years ago, and the beginning of this one, 15 years ago, the economy was going crazy. There wasn't any discussion about wage problems or income inequality because the country was zooming. There's only three things you need to have a successful economy. Common sense regulation so we don't break these people. Number two, you got to have taxes that are lower, particularly on these business people. And thirdly, you got to have that thing can't keep going up. And when you do that, you get economic growth. Now we have to train people. Workforce is important these days more than it's ever been. So anyway, all this time I've been doing these things, it's because we were working against the establishment, but we got it done. And Tommy didn't mention, beyond all these incredible things that I did in Washington and in Ohio, he forgot I was also a huge television star on Fox News. How could you leave that out, Tommy, huh? I mean, come on. But the other thing I want to tell you about is I also spent 18 years on the Armed Services Committee. And, you know, it's really amazing to me. When I went to Congress, I was 30 years old. I was like one of the youngest in America. I mean, can you believe? I mean, I can't even believe when I think about how fortunate I've been in this lifetime. The good Lord has definitely blessed me or put me in a position to do some things. They didn't have any committee assignment for me. And finally, they made a deal. Bob Michael and Tip O'Neill made a deal to create 2 extra spots on the Armed Services Committee. And I remember getting on this committee. This is the committee that decides all the allocation of resources to build a defense. And I remember getting on the committee, and I announced it to my local newspaper, and the guy who was the writer said, well, why would we even care about that? Isn't it ironic that today, one of the biggest things that we need in a commander-in-chief is experience in the world of international affairs and defense and national security. So I was on that committee. And I'm going to tell you that because we're all watching Brussels. Now, some people say what we ought to do is we should just ban all Muslims from coming into the country. Okay, I don't know how you do that. I mean, do you ask somebody when they're coming in, are you Catholic or are you Muslim? I mean, how do you do that? Then the second thing is, if you think about it, you know, the overwhelming, I mean, like the infinitesimal numbers of Muslims in this world, how do you think they feel about what happened in Brussels or in Paris? How do you think they feel yesterday when they blew up all those women and children over in Pakistan? How do you think that the most Muslims feel about that? You ever think about that? They think it's as horrible as we think it is. And so you have this tiny percentage of people who are in that community who are radicalized. Now we need to destroy them, right? Now let me ask you a question. If we know we need to destroy them and we know they live in a neighborhood with other people who happen to be Muslims, how do you think we're going to find out who the bad actors are if we don't have a relationship with the people who hate them as much as we do? How's that going to work? Can somebody tell me? If you have a better idea, I want you to tell me right now. Because this is
nonsense. You want to get this world straightened out? We need to bring all the civilized people of the world together, because the vast majority of the world is civilized. They don't believe that blowing innocent people at an airport up makes any sense at all. This is a group of lunatics and murderers. And if you live in a civilized world, it could be your family next. A radicalized Muslim will kill a Muslim. Do you know that? And so what we want to do is create more divisions. We're going to start policing the neighborhoods of Muslims. How are we going to do that? We got any neighborhoods here in La Crosse, Muslim neighborhoods, we're going to start patrolling? This is just politics. That's all it is. Trying to appeal to people's base instincts and fears. So what do? Well, first of all, I was in Congress when the Muslim countries, Arab countries, joined with us and Europe to beat Saddam Hussein over in Kuwait. I was there when the ambassador from Egypt stood in the Rose Garden of the White House and said, "We're all going together." It worked. By the way, give the old Bush some credit, because when we pushed Saddam out, people said, well, he didn't finish the job. You remember when people said that? He should have gone to Baghdad, should have taken the whole thing over. He actually had smart people around him that realized that you take it, you own it. We're going to run Iraq? We've been trying to do it. How's it working out? So, we need to turn lemons into lemonade. And here's how we do it. We talk to those Arab Muslim countries who agree with us. Who are they? Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states. By the way, I saw the president made another blunder. He's refusing to meet with the leader of Turkey. Now, I don't like what the leader of Turkey's doing, but it was the leader of Turkey who contacted the people in Brussels, the intelligence agency, and say, you have a guy coming back who's radicalized. And by the way, the people in Belgium, they can't get out of their own way. You got so many bureaucracies and so much political correctness. They knew where this guy was trouble. They got one of these guys committed a shot at the police. When he was arrested, they released him. So, here we were, here's the President of the United States pushing another guy away that we need to have. We need Erdogan, the leader of Turkey. We don't like everything he does, but the President won't meet with him. He has time to meet with Castro at a baseball game, but this guy's critical to us. And we don't agree with him on a lot of matters, okay? We have to figure it out. So, what else do? We get the countries in Europe. You think that the French don't understand the problem? You think the Brits don't understand the problem? You think the people in Belgium don't understand the problem? Do you think the people in Germany don't understand Of course they understand the problem. And the leadership of this country needs to bring this world together to destroy the radical Islamists. But if we divide ourselves on the basis of ethnicity and religion, you tell me how we're going to bring them together. So I'm going to spend my time trashing you. And by the way, could you come and help me? I'm serious. You need to think about this, folks. So the world should come together. And we need to destroy ISIS in the air and on the ground. We can't bomb them into, one guy says, make the sands glow. You need to beat them where they are. And we need to do it as a world, as a civilized world. Do you understand what we're dealing with here? And then over in Europe, I said on the other day, Saturday, we need to change NATO, Tommy. NATO is a military organization virtually exclusively. It needs to become an intelligence and a policing organization to finally get those people in Europe to start working together. Because we need the intelligence. We need to know who these people are. And a lot of it is human intelligence on the ground. They need to know what's happening in the neighborhoods. They need to know the radicalism that goes on in a mosque. And I'm going to tell you, Tommy isn't going to find it out. They'll know where he's coming when he's a mile away. We need to cooperate, folks, because this is civilization we're talking about. And delivering a message to stoke the fears of people is not the way to solve this. And why do I tell you this? Because I got two 16-year-old daughters. And there are a lot of people I love in this world, including these kids right here. Because you know what? When one of them is harmed, a little piece of me dies too. And all of us. Because we are all connected in this world. And we have to destroy this evil. And with good intelligence and with proper policing, maybe we can't defeat it all, but we can do a heck of a lot better. And here in this country, we have, I tell you something. See this guy standing back here with the badge on? Our counterterrorism folks, which are the FBI, the Homeland Security, the state, and the local law enforcement, these are the people that must disrupt these attacks. And they do, by the way. In my state, I don't know how many people we've prosecuted because the attacks have been disrupted or the potential has been disrupted. And I'm sure you have it here in Wisconsin as well. And we do this the right way. Oh, the toughest one is the lone wolf and the homegrown terrorist. They're the toughest. And you know who has to report on them? You know what happened over in Brussels? It was a cab driver that smelled the fumes from the homemade bomb. And there was a neighbor who reported there's something weird going on in that apartment. Police never showed up. That's why they're now saying to the United States, could you come over here and help us? Because we have the expertise to do it, and we need to break down the bureaucracy over there so they do their job and they let us know who's coming here, and we can figure this out. That's what we need to do. And get on with our lives. Not huddle somewhere because we're afraid or not like somebody because of their religion. We're America. We don't shrink from the world. We have to lead the world. That's who we are. If we don't want to lead the world's going to go south. I mean, that's just the way it is. And people complain, oh, the other countries don't do everything they ought to do. Well, yeah, they don't. Do you ever notice in a family? Okay, who in here thinks they carry more of the share of the family than the siblings? Anybody, raise your hand. Come on. Here's one right back here, right? Here's one right here, okay? You carry the load, right? Why do you carry the load, sir? Why?
Because I love my parents, I love my family, and somebody's got to do it.
Yeah, and you complain to your wife, why isn't my brother doing this? And I got that. But you know what? That's the way we're made. To whom much is given, much is expected. And our country is a great country to whom much has been given and much is expected. Doesn't mean we need to be saps or fools, but it means we're going to be leaders. And you know, leadership's always what I see. Then I see somebody here that understood a little bit about leadership. Who the heck was it walking in here? Huh? Did I see something about Newt Rockney and Vince Lombardi? You guys ever heard of Vince Lombardi? I've heard about him, you know. So, folks, I just want to tell you that we can, and here with these counterterrorism task force people, they just need to have the resources, which they have, and they need the tools. And that's why it's important that this Apple encryption business you're reading about, you didn't even know what this thing was, right? We need to have that resolved. And by the way, now we're finding out that they're trying to figure out a way to hack into our dams and our nuclear plants, and we will get it fixed with good leadership. All these things can be dealt with. Now, if we got a bunch of people who know what they're doing, then it makes me a little nervous. But we're going to be okay. And it's going to require us to do some things. It'll be fine. And then we'll move on. And we'll get that under control. And we'll get the economy moving again. And you will believe that these kids who are sleeping on the floor here, can't we do better than that? I mean, isn't there a cot or something? Look at them under here. I mean, he might be playing Cowboys and Indians or something, but that they're going to have a good future. Because this is what it's all about, girls. It's all about you having a life better than your mommy and daddy. That's what we all want for you. Right, folks? Okay. How about some questions? You talk about anything you want, and if I don't like the question, Tommy will answer it. Yes, sir.
Future President Kasich, I have a question. I've been a Republican for 48 years.
Well, what were you before that?
Nothing.
A Packer fan. I got you.
No.
Yes?
I must confess a little disappointment in the Republican Party over the last 4 or 5 elections. And so my question is, does the leadership of the Republican Party understand that the demographic of this country is changing? And what are we doing to attract more of the other groups into the Republican Party?
Well, first of all, I would tell you that, what good does it do to win a primary in a narrow way and get your brains beat out in a general if you want to elect a president, okay? I'm the only one who pulls ahead of Hillary Clinton. I have her by 11 points in the last poll. I don't know what these people are doing. They play politics and all that. But the fact is that, my message, who do you want to talk about? You want to talk about Hispanics? My message is finish the wall. That's reasonable. Have a guest worker program, and if you came here illegally and you've not committed a crime since you've been here, you're going to pay a fine, some back taxes, and you get a path to legalization. You're not going to become a citizen because we're not going to let you do that. That's not an anti-message to Hispanics. How about what I've just said about Muslims? Huh? African Americans. I was able to get 26%. You never got 26% of the African American vote. Oh, you did not tell it. Zach, coffee. Can I get some tea, please? I don't believe you, Tommy. I'm going to have to recheck that. Well, that's pretty good, but that's because he reached out. That's what he is. That's why I probably didn't win the last election he ran for. He wasn't narrow enough. So you win the primary, lose the war. So, the fact of the matter is, the reason why I do well, sir, is, first of all, I don't like I. But what I'm stuck in the eyes, okay? Team is what matters. There is a team that surrounds me that is good. We reach out. We're helping in our state the mentally ill, the drug addicted, the working poor, the minority community, the developmentally disabled. We want everyone to rise. We did criminal justice reform, so we're not locking nonviolent felons up next to a murderer. We're involved in many different things because that's what you do as a public official. I'm not out here to appeal to any, I'm going to get your vote, so I'll tell you what you want to hear. I won't do that, ma'am. Maybe for you, though. You look like you might be good. But the fact is that do your job. I landed at the airport today, and I walked into the little office, and there were 3 ladies standing in there. You know what they said? You're our man. We're proud of you. Okay, whether I win or lose, that's a good thing to hear. So, and the demographics are changing, but we shouldn't change just because the demographics are changing. We should be changing because everybody should have a chance to rise in America. Well, are we going to hold some down and build others up? Who are we going to take orders from? Some rich guy over here going to tell me what to do? Forget about it. So, sir, the other problem we have with the party is fundamentally against as opposed to for things. And you don't do well in an election when you don't know what you're for. You got to know what you're for. And secondly, don't make promises to people. In 2014, and I'm going to give you another little government lesson here. Republicans ran around saying that they were going to repeal Obamacare in 2014. Okay? Can somebody explain to me why that would have been like the most outrageous promise that anybody... Let's see how smart you are, sir.
Because Barack Obama would never sign that law.
Well, isn't that unbelievable? Give that man a cigar, okay? No wonder why you're carrying the family. You're smart. But the fact is, when you go out and promise it, You go out and promise you're going to do that, there's no way you're going to do it. What do you think that does to people? That's sort of like, I'll pick you up at 9, never show up. Call you the next day, I'll pick you up at 9, never show up. At some point, people say, I don't believe you, I don't trust you, and by the way, don't call me again. That's where a lot of the Republican base is, but they don't understand that they've been fed a bill of goods, and so they're bitter, so what do? They elect more people who make these crazy promises. You know, the circus is here today. They're getting more good stuff today than they've had out of me in a long time. That's what happens when I get rest, folks. Where's the circus? Did they leave? Oh, there he is. It's the circus right here. I've never seen the show. I understand my wife's a star on there, and is she pretty? She's pretty good, yeah. But what is that show? Tell them all about that show.
It's a real-time documentary that shows every Sunday night. Instead of seeing a documentary 6 months after the election, we shoot Monday through Friday. We'll roll this up, so you'll see this Sunday night.
Have any of you ever seen this show called The Circus? Oh, you've seen it. How is it? You're like the star of this town hall. You're the only guy. Anyway, so, sir, what I'm saying to you is ideas. Don't make promises you can't keep. And reach out. Everybody, the purpose of politics is give everybody a chance to rise, not just a few people. And that's where I'm stuck, like it or not. Okay. Yes, sir, right here.
I'm a polio survivor, and I want to thank you for supporting Medicaid expansion. I do have a question about the Trans-Pacific Partnership. From what I've heard, it would increase wealth inequality, take some manufacturing jobs, and some American sovereignty. Could you comment on that, please?
Well, I'm glad. I mean, people say, was that a hard decision to expand Medicaid? No, it was a piece of cake. If I got a chance to help the mentally ill, the drug addicted, the working poor to get up on their feet, why would I say no? I don't know if any of you saw 60 Minutes last night about what is it called, the health wagon? Did you see that story? Well, that's what it's come to? We got to drive around and do cupcake sales to help people that don't have any health care? Well, anyway, let's go to your question. Are we going to lose sovereignty because of TPP? No, we're not going to lose any sovereignty. What's the problem with it? I think one of the problems that may get resolved before it's over is what we call currency manipulation, where a country, manipulates their currency. Now, that's always hard to find out. But if we can find it out, then it ought to be a trade violation. Now, let me also say to you, the reason why we need that agreement, these are all these countries in Asia. We need to have allies in Asia that protect us or offer us support against an increasingly aggressive China. Now, we don't need to declare China as an enemy, but we need to understand who they are. Now, let's talk about trade in general. 1 out of every 5 Americans has a job connected to trade. 38 million Americans work in trade. So let's say we decide we're not going to have any more trade. Okay? What happens? Well, what will happen is we don't have any trade, so nothing comes in. The prices of what we have here goes up. So people buy less of it. If they buy less of it, that doesn't mean we need to make any more of it. So what does that do to people who work? It unemploys them. Now, I'm going to tell you another thing that's really interesting, and it's about a thing called innovation. When Tommy and I were kids, do you know why the Japanese cars got into this country? Because our cars weren't very good. Okay, they were not very good. And when the Japanese cars came in, well, all of a sudden, the U.S. automakers said, maybe we better make better cars. Maybe we better compete. So yesterday I'm watching the LPGA and they got the Kia golf tournament. It's unbelievable. But the fact of the matter is that trade, sir, can be good for innovation, and look, America is the most open economy in the world. All we're doing with trade deals is lowering their barriers. Now, you got these guys back here, they don't want to hear all this talk. So what happens if something comes in here and takes a job away? Well, I tell you, the answer to that is we got to be right in front to take that worker and retrain them, because jobs are always changing in this country. You know, we used to make buggy whips many years ago. We don't make buggy whips anymore. Somebody else makes buggy whips. But what we know is that if somebody gets displaced by trade, we got to be there. When I know something's going to close down in my state, for example, we have a company that is going to close a facility over time, and it's because the oil and gas industry has gone south and they're not making as many things. So you know what we're doing? We're up there. We're going to send everybody up there. We're going to train you for something that's real so you can get another job in a changing economy. Now, I would also tell you that when countries take advantage of us, we need to act immediately against them. Because I think we've been arrogant in this country by saying, oh, well, they're cheated, or we'll get to it later. And let me give you an example. I have a friend who ran Weirton Steel. I called him the other day because we were discussing trade. And I reminded him that when he was the CEO of Weirton Steel, they closed down. They went bankrupt. Part of it was because he couldn't get a vote from the retirees to try to straighten out the finances. But you know what he told me? The problem gets to be when you know that somebody's cheating, they know how to cheat and they know how to be smart about cheating, Tommy. So what they do is they cheat in ways, and by the time we accumulate the information, the job is gone. We need an early warning system when we suspect it and see it, and we got to stop these people from sending their products in this country. So I think we can have a system that works for the workers, that permits innovation, the change of industry, but you got to also have fair trade deals. You got to enforce them. And in addition to that, if somebody does lose their job, we got to get them another job. And how you getting along, by the way? How long have you had polio?
Since I was 10 months old, which was September 1952. The doctor said if I lived, I'd be a vegetable, I would be able to use a wheelchair. Doctors were wrong. The Lord and my parents were right.
That takes me to one other thing we have to think about here. Remember, I was mentioning that we have to keep our eyes open when we see trouble. But there's another thing that we have to realize. And, you know, the Lord has made us special. You know, I was in Utah and I said this to a young lady. I said, you know, there's never been anybody in the world like you, and there will never be anybody in the world like you again. So you're special. And she started to cry. And I don't know whether she was touched or whether she was frightened. Maybe. My wife pointed it out because I told my wife about it. It was a very special moment. But you know, when we know we're made special, and we know we're made special for a purpose, then it is our job to carry out that purpose. That's, I think, what the Lord wants, isn't it, sir? And so we have to figure out what our purpose is. And the strength of our country is not in, you know, Kasich's here, maybe he'll be president. Okay, great. I'll do my job. I'll get the numbers to keep going up. I'll go to Europe. We'll fix these things. But our education, our poverty programs, programs for the lonely, our seniors who are left alone, those problems, those things get fixed right here in La Crosse. They don't get fixed. You know, what am I going to come in here on some charger and, you know, with a big white hat like McKinnon over there and fix your problems? Who do you think? What do you think the strength of our? Where's the strength of our country, ma'am? Can you tell me? Where's the spirit of our country? Where's it rest? Among its people, with its people doing their job, all of us together, to make things a little bit better. That's where it rests. Other questions? Yes, sir. Thank you, Alex. And we'll come to you next. Ladies next.
I believe it was Meet the Press yesterday, and they were bringing up the fact that they were very surprised that due to the terrorist action over in Europe and stuff like that it did not allow the attention to be drawn on supposedly this interview that Trump had with, I think it was Washington Post or something. And they were going over his responses, and they were saying they couldn't understand why he was so blatantly just avoiding the questions that were being asked in that interview. And they were wondering why people weren't picking up on the fact that he was just not answering any of their questions at all. And he says, this is something that needs to, grow legs or something. People need to realize that when he's asked a direct question about what would you do about this or what would you do about that or how would you handle this situation, he doesn't have any answers to those specific questions. And I was wondering, I'm an independent, and I came here today because of the fact I just wanted to hear what you had to say about different topics. And what do you feel about the fact?
So how am I doing?
Well, you're doing pretty good, I think.
Okay, good. All right.
But
let's just move on to the next person here. No, okay.
My question.
How do I feel about? Look, sir. Here's the situation.
Well, I was just wondering what you think about what he's saying about that he just has these flippant answers, but he doesn't go into any detailed explanation as to what he's going to do.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think I have time to watch Donald Trump's interviews? I mean, I don't mean that disparagingly, to tell you the truth, but I got like a lot of things I got to do in my life. And I don't even read most of this stuff. I mean, I don't have time for that. There's too many other things to read and too many things to be knowledgeable about. But, sir, look, what's happened is he is, keep going back to these guys. These guys are like, they like Trump. Because they feel he's sticking up for him. And they think that he's getting ripped off. I got any truth in what I'm saying, guys? Maybe you don't want to shake your head because the boss is watching. But I can tell you some of them are like, this system is terrible. They're all crooks and they don't get anything done and they're only looking out for themselves. I understand that. But you see, I grew up in it. I went to my high school reunion when I was a congressman. I'm like, congressman, right? I walk in. This guy walks up to me. He says, Johnny, you're congressman, aren't you? And I said, oh, yeah. He says, well, I voted for you to be one of the most likely to succeed. What happened? You know why? Because so many of the politicians where I grew up went to jail. It was not a badge of honor. It wasn't. And so people are fed up. The problem is I might be fed up about something, but if I don't have a solution for it, what does it matter? When I was a kid, Tommy, when you went home, where'd you go to school? You went to University of Wisconsin, is that right? This guy, I tell you, everything's about the University of Wisconsin. Anyway, you remember when you went home and you told you were at and maybe you never did this, but I did. You'd sit at the table and you'd start complaining about something about the country or the school or whatever, or your mom or dad would look at you and say, Tommy, if it's so bad, what are you going to do about it? Is that true? We all have arguments with our parents when we went to college. That's the purpose of college, to learn how to argue, right, with your parents. But if you don't have an answer, I learned keep your mouth shut until you can figure it out. So why don't you just come out and endorse me right now, sir? The circus is here. They're filming you. Huh?
The point I simply was making was that.
Well, I mean, come on already.
No, the commentators were simply saying that you mentioned in your opening statements that you have this experience dealing with the military, and they were trying to point out that from Trump's responses, it's as though he had no understanding of military affairs, what it was there for, what its purpose was, and they were so surprised that nobody was taking and calling him out about his lack of direct experience having to do with any sort of military affairs.
I've called them all out. They don't put me on. I'm too nice. Anyway, but I hear you, sir. So just make up your mind and go over here, talk to McKinnon. You'll make the circus this weekend and all that. I got to go here, then I'll go here, and then I'm going to go there, and then I have to go. Go ahead, miss. I'm sorry I got to go, but I got to go. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm going. Did you all see me walking down the street? They're like, Governor, you're going the wrong way. I was having a little exercise. Okay, yes.
Thank you for being here today. Thank you for your positive campaign. It's been really nice. Thank you. I've been a nurse. I've been a nurse for about 20-some years.
You've been what? I'm sorry.
I've been a registered nurse for 20-some years, and feel like many that healthcare is not attainable right now. I mean, it's going in the wrong direction. It's too expensive.
Yeah.
Cutting at the bottom line versus so it's not working. I have a college student at University of Wisconsin-Platteville, but I would like for him to have health care someday that's affordable, but yet quality.
You want to be a doctor, kiddo?
Engineer.
An engineer? Well, that's pretty good, too. What are you, smart? Huh? Smart guy? Good for you. Is that what you're taking? Your grades okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
God bless you. Give that kid a round of applause, huh? Let me just tell you, the problem, I'm going to cut to the quick on this healthcare thing. Look, what we need to know is, you're a registered nurse, we need to know how your hospital works, what it costs, and what its quality is. We don't have that information right now. And we also don't know, really, with physicians, we don't really know what their quality is or what they charge. So we got to figure it out. And if a hospital does a good job below the average, then we want to give them a financial reward for that. And if a physician, if your primary care doctor keeps you healthy below what's expected, we give he or her a financial reward. We open the whole system up and we force competition and we drive towards high quality and low prices. We're doing it in our state. It's the most solid plan that anybody is talking about in the country today because Obamacare is not working. Number one, healthcare costs keep going up, insurance costs are up, and employers won't hire any more people because they're afraid of getting caught in Obamacare. But there is an answer for this, and the answer is ultimately going to be to pay people for lower prices and high quality. Okay, do you hear what I'm saying? And the most important thing that you need to be a nurse is patience. Get it? Okay. Bad joke, McKinnon. That's not going on. Do not put that on. Okay. There was another hand right here. Yes, ma'am.
All right. I just want to say thank you for being here today.
Let me just finish. Let me just finish one other thing. I don't want to tell you this is going to be simple, and I have to tell you that we're going to have to constantly reset things because people will figure out a way to get paid for not great quality and lower prices. It's going to have to constantly stay on top of it. But I believe that's the way we should do it. So if your hospital, and I don't know how many hospitals, rural America is a big challenge. But in my state, where I live in Columbus, we have, 5 hospital systems. We have more heart hospitals than we have hearts, okay? So what we need to do is we need to be paying them on the basis of superior quality and lower prices than everybody in the area. Because if we pay them that way, then we're going to, and reward them for that, that's going to force the competition, the savings, and the quality that we want. And now we go to health care. I like to say, if you get a hospital bill, and I have one at home because I get treated for high pressure in my eyes at the Cleveland Clinic. When I get a hospital bill, I look at it, I think it's easier to interpret the Dead Sea Scrolls than it is to understand a hospital bill. So it needs to be clarified, okay? And it's very complicated. And this is the man that can help us to figure this out. I'm telling you, Tommy Thompson is a guy. He is smart, visionary, clever, and be part of a team to put this together because I can't do it alone. Tommy, the program I'm talking about, we're actually doing it in Ohio. It's called payment reform. You're, I think, somewhat familiar with it, and I think it'll work. But I don't want to tell you it's just so easy, because it is not going to be easy, but it needs to be done. You get the last word there.
Okay, thank you again for being here. I'm a millennial, and a lot of my millennial friends seem to have an issue with trusting our government right now. And I'm just wondering, when you're elected president, what you will do to help rebuild the trust with the government for the people of America.
Well, I think, first of all, you got to make it work. So I'm going to transfer welfare, education, job training, health care, and infrastructure, building roads back to the states. I want to get all those programs back to where we can run them, okay? Number 2, I think it's an effort also. I'm going to have to travel. And when I say travel, I mean you're going to have to be in America. And you're going to have to go. If I'm president, they would try to stop me. But I would want to continue to do these things. Now, it'll be hard. And I don't know what I'm getting into. But it seems to me as though on a more regular basis, Tommy's seen a couple of these. These are just wonderful, aren't they, Tommy? And it gets people, they understand you. They get to hear you. And you can be held accountable, too, which no one likes to be, but it's life. So I think, and the other thing is for our young people, people say, well, how do you relate to them? Well, I'll tell you why. Because young people have to believe they can change the world. You got the gifts to do it, go do it. Believe in yourself. Believe in something bigger than yourself. Live a life bigger than yourself. That's what life's all about. And I was just at Villanova, one of the Final Four teams, by the way. You would not have believed how fantastic that visit was. With the young people that were there, I mean, it was 1,000 people at the town hall. We had hundreds in the overflow. Maybe they get the sense a little bit. Look, a lot of these young people would look towards Bernie or towards me, believe it or not. And I can't figure that out other than people suspect things. They sense things. People are smart. And that's why I think overall they'll find out, they'll sense exactly, sir, the kind of things that you were raising before. But I think a lot of it is to start making this government work. And I'll give you a good example. We absolutely have to get a big-time person who's well-known, who's very well-respected, to fix the VA. We can't have a program like that doesn't work, okay? And in that regard, by the way, any combat veteran that comes home ought to get health care wherever they want to go, and let's just get that done. Now, and I think we got a problem with the IRS, and that has to be fixed. So there's a lot of these things that if we can have good solutions and get people who have credibility. A perfect guy is, I watched a little bit of it last night, and I was flipping between the NCAA game and 60 Minutes, but one of the person who's greatly admired, I don't think he would do it, is a guy like Bill Gates. Bill Gates, if you put Bill Gates in charge of something and ask him for a year, go do this, maybe, I'll call him and ask him. Go fix the VA, modernize it, make it work. If you do something like that, it gets credibility. People start to believe, but it takes time. In my state, things were really bad and people didn't trust, but it's changed. It's changed, and because I think we're producing. You just do the best you can. Anyway, we have a primary coming up, they tell me, and I hope that you can, first of all, make up your mind, sir. I wouldn't go to dinner with you. You'd probably look at the menu all night long, and I'd never get out of there. My wife's on spring vacation with my daughters, okay? But I have two 16-year-old daughters, and they are with my wife. They're with a friend of ours. They're on their spring break, and so I finally get home, right? And at 6 o'clock in the morning on Friday, to get up and go on spring break. I'm like, why are you leaving me? But I have to tell you, it was a great day yesterday because after we acknowledged that Jesus had risen, yes. You know what I always say? If he hasn't risen, what's the purpose of life, really? We're not going to get all the justice, and we got, this world is a tough world, but we've got hope for what life will be like, after death. But I will tell you this, beyond that very important thing, I got to start eating ice cream again after Lent, and I had some great Ben & Jerry's New York fudge chunk. Try it, okay? Give me your vote and tell everybody you know, please. Thank you all very much. God bless.